Students, in this lesson, we're going to help you find your first house. By the end of this lesson, you should understand the pros and cons of apartments compared to houses. You should be able to develop a system on how to decide on a place to live. And of course, know the budget for your cost for your housing. And we'll teach you about some of the rights and responsibilities as a renter that you will have. So a couple key questions. First one is, do you want to live alone or with roommates? Now, living alone might sound better because it's totally private, but it's expensive. You're responsible for everything, all bills, all rents, all deposits, everything. It's not easily affordable for most young adults, so we're not going to talk about that much. Roommates, of course, you got to know who they are. Don't recommend moving in with strangers unless you really have checked it out. Hopefully you've got a compatible lifestyle with everybody. If someone's got to work early in the morning, somebody else stays up really late, that can be a problem. Whatever you do, put everyone on the lease. Most apartment complexes require this already. Anyone over the age of 18 has to be on the lease, but if you choose to have other renters and you're the only person on the lease, guess what? You're responsible for everything, financially, damages, deposit, everything. Okay, and once you have people in there, make sure you guys understand the chores and obligations of each other. WikiHow.com has a pretty good site on how to be a good roommate, and these things are actually pretty good. I would recommend reading that if you want to know what it's like to be in a roommate situation. Okay, most people coming out of college or coming right out of high school are going to end up in apartments. That's where we're going to focus this. Okay, we'll compare apartments to houses, and clearly there's some advantages to each and some disadvantages. Okay, apartments are simple. There's less stuff to buy because it's smaller. There's less to maintain, right? You don't have to buy as much furniture. You don't have to buy lawn equipment, that type of thing, because you don't have a yard. The amenities are good. Usually you have a gym and a pool for a lot of apartment complexes in the suburbs these days. Some of them have a common area like a meeting room with a fireplace or something like that, but not always. Some apartments are just what you see, a roof over your head and a couple rooms in there. Okay, so clearly the disadvantages are they're less space. Sometimes you get a carport instead of a garage. Sometimes you don't even get a carport. Your car's just sitting out there in the rain or in the sun in the hot summers. And sometimes it's a long walk going upstairs. Okay, so clearly you have less privacy. Apartments share walls with somebody. If you get an end unit, typically you'll only have one neighbor against one wall. But in multi-story apartment complexes, you'll have somebody above you, somebody below you in some cases, and that can be a problem if they're walking real loud, if you've got a ton of people over. Okay, so be aware of that. The house gives you more space in most cases. You get a garage, you get some more storage. Your car's indoors if you have a garage in most cases. You get a yard. Hey, that's great, lots of space, but you also got to maintain that yard. So houses have more privacy, but there's more stuff to buy, more rooms to furnish. You got more bills to pay. You got to pay water, sewer, and trash. Oh, and you might have to pay a gardener if you can't do it yourself. Okay, so there's more to maintain. Yard work and fertilizers and tools to do yard work are things that most young people don't have. So it's something to think about when you go from an apartment to a house. All right. So we're going to focus mostly on finding an apartment here. So we're going to teach you a 6-step process to help you find your own place. First thing, since this is a personal finance class, is this is all about budget. Set a maximum rent and don't go over it. Housing costs will be one of your biggest expenses, probably the biggest expense. Don't go over 1/3 of your gross income when you're paying for an apartment. Okay, and most apartment complexes these days do look to see if you have the income that is big enough to make the cost of that apartment 1/3 or less. So keep that in mind. Your monthly gross income divided by 3 should be the maximum rent you'll pay. So here's an example. You make $2,100 a month before taxes, divide by 3. That's $700 per month. That should be your maximum rent. Now, if you only make $1,800, clearly that's $600 per month rent. That's your max rent you should pay. But be careful, because if you share a place, it might be a little bit cheaper. If your rent is known and you don't know your gross income yet, multiply the rent by 3. It's the opposite of dividing. So take the rent, multiply by 3, and get your required gross income. So if you found a place you loved and it was $650 a month, multiply by 3, and you need to make $1,950 a month gross income. It's about $450 per week. So if you find a place you love and it was $850, but it's 2-bedroom and you can split it with somebody, that's only $425 for you, because you cut it in half, right? Divide by 2, multiply by 3, and you get $1,275 is your gross income. That's only about $300 per week that you need to make. So use these calculations, but make sure your rent is only 1/3 of your gross income. You get into trouble if all your money's going to housing, and that can happen sometimes, so be careful. Okay, Second step in finding your own place, target the neighborhoods. Make sure it's a good location because you can't change the location. Good roommates, cheap rent, none of those things are going to change the location. That's one of the key rules of real estate, whether you're renting or owning, is the location. Is it close to what you need? Do you have access to transportation, bus routes, or mass transit? Maybe you live in a big city. Is it close to major thoroughfares and major highways that you need to get on to get to work? So, and of course, is it safe and friendly? So we're going to show you a couple tools here, City Data and Neighborhood Scout, that'll talk to you about those things. Okay. So let's get out of the PowerPoint here. Let's go to one of these websites here. Let's look at City Data. If I just go type in 95661, I just picked one of the zip codes in Roseville. Look at all the things it tells you. It tells you how old people are in that neighborhood. It tells you what home sales are doing. Home sales do reflect rents, right? If home sales are going up, typically rents are going up too, something you want to think about. But way down here, it tells you all kinds of things. Number of renters, percent of renters, how that compares to the rest of the state. It'll tell you all kinds of things like the population, how old they are, how well educated they are. Okay, all kinds of things. So it'll compare you to state averages. It'll tell you about the racial breakdown or the ethnic breakdown of that area. That might be important to you. So all kinds of stuff on this one. Okay. This one here is Neighborhood Scout, and this tells you all kinds of valuable things like crime rates. I typed in 95661. It gave me multiple addresses over here. Okay. And so I picked one neighborhood of 95661. It tells me the violent crime rate. It tells me the property crime rate. You can figure out what these are probably, right? But property crime, that's just theft. Whether someone's breaking into apartments, someone's breaking into cars. The police departments also track this stuff, so they should be able to help as well. But I found this site to be very, very helpful. Okay, you can look at the public schools. You can look at what home prices are doing here. How much are they going up? You can obviously get a description of the neighborhood. So I found this to be a very helpful website. All right, so back to our PowerPoint here. All right, once you find a neighborhood you want to shop around, do your research, find out what the rents are, how much deposit they require, and utilities, something that young people often don't think about because somebody else paid for it when you were in the dorms or when you were at home with mom and dad, or if you're living with an uncle or something like that. You don't think about that, but they do cost money. Electricity, water, trash, all these things you got to pay for. Okay, so look for specials. If a place is very desirable, it might be full, so you got to anticipate, is someone moving out soon, and try to pounce on that. Do some comparison shopping, look at dollars per square foot, and so you want to be real careful about that. So a couple tools to find this data without driving all over the place would be apartmentguide.com and apartment ratings. So let's take a look at those. Okay, here we go. Let's go look at apartments for rent. Okay, so apartmentguide.com, I just typed in Roseville, California. I went to California, went to the R's for Roseville, and here's what I found. Lots of places. Okay, there's the name of one right there. Okay, Autumn Oaks. Okay, here's one called Pinnacle Galleria right across from the mall. Here's one over here called, that's not showing me, but you can find them, Slate Creek at Johnson Ranch. Here's one over here, okay, Olympus Park. So it gives you all these ones. Now, notice this. Yeah, I can set the price range in here if I want to, right? This price is 900 to 11. I can click on price range and it'll let me change the price. I've already done it here. Now I went from 700 to 900. Look how few apartments there are now in the Roseville area. Well, they're all over in North Highlands or in Citrus Heights down here. Lots of them in that price range in other places, but very few in Roseville and Rockland. Okay, let's lower it again. If I went from here, if I went all the way down to 500 to 700, let's take a look now. Okay, there's that price range. There's nothing in Roseville or Rockland for 500 to 700, according to this site. So keep that in mind. You got to start looking elsewhere in the area if you want a really cheap place like 500 to 700. Okay, not too much around for that. So keep that in mind. All right. Once you do find this, though, like here is back to the, I think this is 700 to 900. It starts listing them over here, and it'll tell you 1 to 2 beds. It'll tell you what the phone number is. You can check all kinds of things about rent specials. This is very helpful. Okay, so here's all the apartments you want to call. You can go from there. Now, these guys all have salespeople that'll try to sell you the apartment just like anything else. So one thing you can do is you can go to this site, Apartment Ratings. You can type in the zip code and look for all these ratings because you can enter something here. You can review an apartment and say what it was like to live there, say how good the landlord was, say how well they kept up the maintenance in the area. So you see some of these same apartments all listed here, and you can find out what people said, right? There may only be 2 reviews. Here's one that's got 35 reviews. So read what you can. Okay, there's a lot of information on the web. We encourage you to go find that. All right. So back to this process here. You want to shop around. You want to know how much things cost, and you want to be able to do that with the research on the web. Here's what I did for you. I looked at 5 different places, asked for a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom apartment. I did the square footage and the rent. I asked what's the deposit. They were all between $300 and $500. There was an application fee of $35 per person. This seemed pretty standard. One place was $45. So there's a lot of consistency, at least in Roseville. But you want to look at dollars per square foot, the rent per square foot. That's one way to gauge it. But I took the rent per month divided by the square footage. That's how big the apartment is, right? 2 bedrooms should be bigger than 1 bedroom. And do the math. This number divided by this number gives you that number there, and you can see what the dollars per square foot is in Roseville. Okay, but do your homework. I didn't list these places here because I want you to go and do that calling, but most places have 1 and 2 bedrooms. They even have 3 bedrooms if you've got a lot of friends, but do your homework, okay? You got to qualify once you get into the apartment, so you'll have to do a credit check, make sure your credit's in good shape. You might have to have somebody you can call to vouch for you, like personal reference. Keep copies of your paychecks. They'll want to see proof of income or proof of employment. And if you don't have a deposit or you don't have any rental history, you might have to have your parents do what's called a co-signing of the lease, which means they're liable for everything too. So take care of the place, keep a good relationship with your parents. They may have to co-sign for you for certain financial things like an apartment. Okay. When you finally get in, read the lease. A lot of people don't. They just sign it. You want to know if it's 1 year or month to month. What happens when the year's up? Do they kick you out, or do you automatically get to stay in there? I want to be aware of that. A big deal for young people is sometimes roommates don't pay. Sometimes you can't pay on time. What are the late fees if you don't pay the rent by the 1st? Okay. How much of your deposit do you get back? A lot of college towns, especially, or a lot of apartments that cater to young people, they keep a big chunk of your deposit just over ticky-tack stuff, like a little scratch in the wall, a little bump in the door, something like that. They'll try to get you for fees, so you've got to do a good job of writing down what the condition of the place was before you started to live in it. How often do they do repairs and maintenance? Who does what? Who pays the utilities? Do you pay them all, or does the apartment complex pay for some of them? And if the landlord wants to come in, how much lead time does he need to give you? Okay. You should know those things from California law. It's easy to look up. Okay. I'll show you how to do that later. Is it furnished? And if you attach something to the walls, like a whole house fan or some cabinetry of some sort in the bathroom or whatever, these are called fixtures. And a lot of times fixtures stay with the owner of the apartment. Once you attach something, it might have to stay, or you got to pull it out and go, and make sure you patch the holes in the wall. Big one for you guys also is, what is the required lead time before they can raise the rent on you? Okay, if they just raise the rent on a daily basis, that's illegal in California. They have to give you either 30 days or 60 days notice before raising the rent. You want to know what those conditions are, whether it's 30 or 60. And what does it take to get out of a lease? If a pipe broke and soaked your apartment and ruined your stuff and there's mold everywhere, what conditions will allow you to get out of the lease without them keeping your deposit? Okay. Contrarily, what if you're doing something or your roommates are doing something where the landlord says the lease is null and void? What happens then? So read your lease, be aware of it. And finally, we would strongly encourage you to get renter's insurance. Okay. A lot of people don't, but here's some free insurance advice, because you should take a look at this site, because renter's insurance is worth the price, because you got to have car insurance. And when you get renter's insurance, you sometimes get a discount. So it's very affordable. And if someone breaks into your house and steals your stuff, guess what? Your car insurance doesn't cover it. Your parents' insurance may not cover it, depending if you're on the coverage, but you're out of luck. The apartment complex isn't going to cover it. Their insurance is not for personal property. You need to have renter's insurance if somebody breaks in and takes all your stuff and you expect it to be covered. Okay, so think about it. It's not always very expensive, and things do happen. Fires do sometimes damage things. Pipes break and can flood the whole apartment, and that can damage stuff that's yours, and you want to be aware of that, so be ready for it. Okay, so there's all kinds of other resources on the web. You can go to Lifehacker and read things about what people think they first knew before getting their apartment. You got this thing called Fresh Home that tells you 10 things you got to know before renting an apartment. Here's a checklist or things to check when inspecting a potential home that you may not think of. I've known people that got a house and there was no cell phone reception there. They never bothered to think about it. So most of the time they're home, they can't even use their cell phone. Okay, and here's a checklist from this one website. I think it's called squawkfox.com, and I'll give you a link to this check-in list as well. This will tell you all the things you need to move into an apartment. All right. So happy hunting, but no matter what you find, if you find that Roseville and Rockland, this area is very expensive, just appreciate this. Here's one from Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City, one of the most expensive places in the world to live. For $650, you get a dorm-style bed in bunk beds in this room, that teeny tiny room, no bathroom, no nothing. That's what you get in New York City. So if you think Roseville's expensive, go look in some of the most expensive places in the world, and hopefully you get a room and an apartment better than this one here for $650. So hopefully you understand that Roseville's a good place to live, but it is a little bit expensive, but it's not as expensive as some of the other places. All right. Here's all those resources we talked about: apartment search tools, neighborhood information tools. Here's some information about leases from the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Here's an attorney's website that tells you about legal implications of leases. And here's some tools that I think every tenant should have: is a check-in, check-out list. You're supposed to be given that to mark down the specific condition of every room, everything in the house or in the apartment. And here's just a list of things you need to furnish your first place. So happy hunting. Hope you enjoyed that, and good luck to you.